Hey everybody, Andrew here from Airdev. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Demystifying Tech. Every week we take a piece of jargon from technology or software and we break it down using a whiteboard. So today we're talking about databases, which in my opinion are the most undervalued aspect of a piece of software. Because at the end of the day, an application is just a way for you to input data using forms and buttons, and then access data on your web page. And so what we see in talking to lots of people looking to create new applications is oftentimes they'll start with pictures, they'll start with diagrams and wireframes and mockups, and they're great for getting a sense of how people are going to interact with your website. But there are often pretty major logical gaps in what those are able to convey to you. And so what we actually do when scoping out and building any application is we always start with the database. And so what I'm going to walk through today is what is a database, how to think about it, as well as the exercise that we do for every application, which I'd really encourage for you to do as well. So first, what is a database? The way I think about it is using Excel as an analogy. So let's say I wanted to do a to-do list. I'd pop open Excel and I'd start putting different things that I needed to do into the different rows of my Excel spreadsheet. And then there might be different bits of information that I wanted to capture about each to-do item, like when it's due and what its status is. And I'd capture those in the different columns. And then let's say there's something else I want to capture, like my grocery list. It doesn't fit very well in this list of to-do items. And so I'm going to open a new sheet and do the same thing. I'll put my different grocery items in different fields that I want to capture about that. And so I can go on like this using different sheets to capture lists of things and then different columns to capture information about those things. This is exactly how a database works in the back of an application. You have different data objects, which are akin to these sheets. And then you have different data fields for each of those objects, which are capturing different pieces of information about them. So what I thought would be helpful is to go through a real life example. Let's take Twitter. So let's say we're trying to create Twitter for the first time. What we would suggest is starting with the database and going through a simple exercise of capturing the data objects. In other words, what sheets do we need? What things do we need information about? And then the data fields. In other words, what columns of information are we capturing about each of those objects? So let's run through it. The first item that we're going to capture for Twitter, which is a very common one for most applications, is users. So Twitter has a big table full of users, millions of them. And then the data fields that we would capture for those users would include things that you'd expect. So their name, maybe email, maybe their handle, etc. Now, you've got your list of users. The other thing that you're going to do on Twitter is you're going to tweet. This is actually our second data object. And the reason why it needs to be something different is because you're capturing different fields of information on a tweet that you wouldn't capture about a user. And so it's not the same as a name, which is just a piece of text. A tweet actually has different things that you're capturing. So for example, a tweet would have the text of the tweet, what you wrote about. It would have the author, who wrote it. It might have a timestamp. Might have a hashtag, etc. So you see we have two different data tables here, each one capturing a list of information about something specific, and then each with a set of different columns or fields that you're capturing. So we'll do one more for Twitter, which would be a thing we call a follow. So every time somebody on Twitter follows someone else, you could create a new row in a third table that captures that information. And so the fields that you're looking to capture here would be the follower, who's doing the following, and the followee, who's following them. So you can see that in a few minutes we've whipped up this database structure. It keeps things very structured, lets us think about what we're going to capture information about. Now I want to highlight a few fields that are very important here: the author, the follower, and the followee. These are interesting because unlike the other fields, these actually are connecting you to different data objects. So the author is actually a user who did the tweet, and same with the follower and followee. This is what we call a relational database, which means the sheets over here are actually connected to one another. Okay, and so a follow helps you connect two users to one another, and a tweet connects all of these things that get written to the people who write about them. And so a relational database is what makes databases so powerful, because they're able to capture all the information and the relationships between them. And that logic really helps you set up the rest of your application. So hopefully at the end of this exercise, you have a deeper appreciation for databases and how cool and fun they can be. And you also have a really practical exercise to go through. I'd encourage you to do this exercise with your next application that you're scoping out. And hopefully it'll make life easier for you as well as your developer. For more info, you can go to airdev.co or airdev.co/blog. See you next time.